Hello and welcome to another episode of the Socially Numb podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahey. Getting back into the groove of it here, I have been working on my site, and the Leahey Report is coming along nicely. I've been adding back content, getting everything looped together. So if you're catching up right now, basically just some background. I had Socially Numb, this podcast had its own site. It's hard to keep the traffic numbers up when I only post once a week. And to make things easier for myself, I rolled in the podcast to my personal site, the Leahey Report, which is RichieLeahey.com. And I used to have two podcasts on sociallynumb.com, which would have been Dad Strength as my second one, where I talk about parenting. And I used to talk about like only sports and stuff on here. Well, I kind of rolled those all back in together, except for the sports. That's still broken out on Southbound Sports. And what I've done is try to redo my posts, or not really redo, but just put the content together, expand it a little bit, and put everything up on one location. And I'm becoming really close to having that completed. So that's what I've mainly been working on. I know whenever I have that completed, then I'm going to get back into it, do some Raspberry Pi videos and some extra content for the site, for the podcast. So keep an eye out for that. I know I've been rolling out, I rolled out a couple episodes ago some of my old videos and some of the old projects and pictures and stuff that I worked on. So those will be coming back again, as I've been rolling more and more of those out, and I'll be posting about them. And what I've done is get back into gaming a bit. So last week I did a super long podcast on the Nintendo Switch. I wouldn't say it was really exhausting. It was like a different type of feel to the podcast. When I was done, like I kind of played the Switch while I did it. So go back through and check it out. And I did some run-throughs. I'll be talking a little bit about that here, but I'm really not going to go ahead and harp on it too long because I don't want to get back into that. You can hear my thoughts there. And in a few weeks, I'll probably revisit that again, because what I'm going to be trying to do is get back into the play a game a week deal that I have for the podcast, which is pretty much the idea behind the podcast right now. Play a game a week, talk about that, talk about other things, any movies and things that I've seen. And so what I've done is got away from that the past couple weeks with the Nintendo Switch launch, and with the moving the site to the Leahey Report. So eventually when that's up, that won't be a part of the show anymore. That will just be the site. And my Twitter and stuff, I'm going to try to be more active on that. So follow me there. Check that out. I'll be throwing a lot more tweets and things together, get some more of the programming and the tech. I think, so like when I set the Blogger site up, I had programming as a category. And right now I'm using the default Blogger theme, one of them. I think it's just like the default one, which is black. And some of the CSS is garbage. Like they haven't updated it. I know, because like some of them, so right now I use whatever the default is. I wanted to kind of get a feel for it. And then I was going to move over the theme that we had before. And that was going to be a slow process. I actually redesigned it with some help and had some feedback on ways to expand it a little bit, to use two menus and have the top menu point to the podcasts, maybe my about page, contact page, possibly. I don't know if Blogger has like a form built in, but I'm still looking into that. So I'm still getting through the settings as I'm moving content. And the content, so basically when I combine all these sites, I have, I think 92 posts 2 weeks ago, 2 more podcast episodes on each, which means I'm probably up to like 96. So in like another week, if I don't get caught up, I'm going to have another 10 things to move into or not. So once I'm caught up, it will be nice and smooth. I'll just be able to add things as I do them. And I've had some ideas on how to expand it. And I'm going to add some more backlog things. So I have some notes that I've done for the podcast, that I've used for the podcast, on basically how to, what I did for each video game that I played. And what I might do is put that all together and separate some of them into separate posts. So on the podcast here, I've talked about the games and I've gone into depth with them. But if you don't listen to the podcast on my site, in the recap, I kind of just mention that I talk about a game. And so what I want to do is kind of rate them. And I have a rating system. I had it all ready to go. And I was actually going to do albums, but there's not that many albums, like musical albums, that I listen to anymore. Most of the stuff bands release like singles now. Like Machine Head did the one, Is There Anyone Listening, last summer, which was like a one-off song. And the way I listen to albums in my car, like I still use an iPod, and I'll put it on an album. Like if I'm in the mood to listen to Iron Maiden, I'll throw on an Iron Maiden album, which is in my car right now, and I listen to the full album. And that's just the routine that I use as I'm driving around. If I don't have a podcast to listen to, I like to listen to an artist's full album. And I'm kind of getting away from that because bands aren't really putting out good full albums. Even the new Metallica album, I was going to start with that one. I really couldn't get into it. I have notes on the video breakdown, which I don't know if I even posted on the old site, but that would be a part of it. So instead, what I think I'm going to do is use that rating system to rate video games that I play and concerts I attend. So it's not going to be like I'm not going to force myself to listen to an album and write a review on it, that kind of garbage that a lot of other sites just throw out there. And then you don't really know because you don't know what type of music. Basically, I'll just talk about the band's performance. Were they great? Were they not? Maybe throw up some pictures of them. I have notes and stuff from when I did it before because I was going to talk about live concerts at the beginning. I think I did. The very first episodes of this, I went ahead and threw those out there. But I'm going to be getting it back into that. And so I don't want to spend too much time talking about the site here, but that's going to be the idea. Is I might throw some ratings up to make it a little bit easier to you to see which games I'm beating. With the Switch, I don't know if they have achievements or trophies. So right now, if you go on to PlayStation 4, you can view my trophy history. I did see there was like 3 weeks where I didn't sync it. I didn't realize that I had to actually go in and view my trophies to have it sync online. So I didn't lose any. I'm not gonna like make the so that you think I'm making it up. But if you checked in the meantime, you might have saw that I was behind. Or like he talked about beating, I think it was like Little Big Planets. When I beat both of those, I never actually went ahead and had the trophy sync. And so when I was looking at my trophies online, I was like, wait a second. It didn't have Little Big Planet. So did I actually miss a level? I thought I missed a level, and then I had to go back through and beat it and then talk about it on the podcast. But when I went in there to check, I just realized that the trophies, I did not sync all the way. So they weren't in sync with the internet. So I've been working on that, getting that up. What I mean is with the Nintendo Switch not having the trophies and achievements, try to get back into it here as I went off topic. The PlayStation does. So you can see which games I've beaten and what levels I've beaten them on. Most of the time, I've mentioned this before, I play on normal because when I play on normal, I don't have enough to invest in. I usually don't play a game twice. I've talked about this before. I use a game purchase sort of like a movie purchase. When I buy a movie, I watch the movie. Because to me, that's a $20 entertainment investment. It's the same as if I would spend $20 to go to a baseball game. I want the full experience. So if I spend $20 to go to a baseball game that's 2 or 3 hours, that's what I want from a movie. If I'm going to spend $20 on a movie or even cheaper, I mean, most of the cost equivalent kind of equals out. So I could do a whole formula on it, but basically, if I pay $20 to go to a baseball game and it gives me 3 hours of excitement, that's what I expect when I buy a movie. If I buy it for $15, I expect it to be like 2 hours or so. If a movie comes out, it has a 90-minute runtime, I usually wait for it to come out down to like $10. Because to me, that's not worth it. Just for a time investment. Unless it's like a funny movie that I've seen before or something and they like release some special edition. But most of the time you can get those for free. Comedies that are that short or anything else you can get for like cheap because you can see them on Netflix or you can see them somewhere else. So that's what I've been doing. I've been trying to get back into it just to watch some movies and some shows and stuff to talk about on the podcast to try to get back into the full media thing that I can get into and write about on the synopsis for each week of the podcast instead of just ranting about. I've had the luxury of the Nintendo Switch. But Nintendo did come out and say that they are going to do media. I haven't seen anything about the trophies. Now, I did put Shovel Knight on the Nintendo. I downloaded that. They released another version. So I'll probably be doing a review like on those. I started to just rip right through the first one again. I've beaten on the PlayStation. I don't think it was before I've beaten it before the podcast, I believe. But I'm still going back through my notes and making sure. Now, there might be some things I talked about on the podcast that I missed. But basically, my idea is I'm going to throw up a ratings page, kind of go back through my notes on the podcast, give them a rating, and then I'll write up a little synopsis on it, maybe 250 words, 500 words, about why I liked the game, why I didn't like the game. Make that a post, and then I'll link to it from the gaming tab. So I think what I'm going to do is throw a gaming tab up. It's going to have a list of all my ratings. And then I might have, I thought about a music tab for the same thing, but it might be a concerts tab instead of just doing albums, because albums are so subjective. I mean, some people like them, some don't. But again, I don't want to talk about this for a big chunk of the episode. I think I've already went like 10 minutes or so. But that's what I'm doing. Unfortunately, like I said, the Nintendo Switch, the individual games have trophies, but I don't think there's any way for people to check, so there's no transparency. But I will tell you, if I say I beat a game, I did beat the game. On the PlayStation, feel free to cross-check me and see, and if there's something I miss, I'll revisit it. But for the most part, again, I don't play all the challenge modes. I don't do anything else. I play mainly for the story. Some of the multiplayer stuff I'll try. If it's a game like the one Star Wars that didn't have a story, I'll try some of the challenges. I think I beat them all on like normal or something, whatever the basic was. But I played through them all. And God, I think for that one, I just went and tried to do the collectibles, which I figured would give me a good base. I'll get a star for each one, and I'll do whatever. And I can also do screenshots or whatever too if people need to see that level of transparency. But I've beaten the games, and I've been going back through and trying to get back into it. So we'll go ahead and start there. Now, for this week on the PlayStation 4, my game to beat was Starwhal. I think it's how you pronounce it. It's a swordfish game. It was one of the free games. And now, I've mentioned this before, I am picking and choosing what PlayStation free games to get because I have Zelda to beat. And I want to spend a lot of time with Zelda. And so that takes out time for me just to run through some of these free games, because I have a backlog of free games on the PlayStation Network. So again, if you download a game, I might not talk about it. I'm picking and choosing based on the titles, based on the length of the game, based on what style it is. So I think this month, I can't remember which games are even up, but I'm not sure if I even downloaded one. But I still have enough to do a game a week, and if I start to catch up, again, I'll tear through some of my other games. I still have like 20 games to beat on the PlayStation 3, I believe. I'm coming close, but I'm still not done with that system. And I'll get into that later today because there's a series that I'm about to dig into. But first off, Starwhal. So Starwhal is a multiplayer game. And I'm going to leave that out there because I haven't really tested the multiplayer part too much. I didn't have someone to like sit down and really put it through the test. So I'm judging this game only on challenge mode, which I felt was frustrating because I played one player challenge mode. I got trophies. I played through each level once, some of them multiple times, because if you die, then you have to redo it. But I made sure I beat it. I got the bronze trophy or whatever. I could have played through a couple bronze and tried to get the silver, I want to say. So I think there was like 30 something levels. I think there was 32 actually. I think you needed 30. You had to get a medal in each one to get the bronze trophy. I think you needed 25 silver, which I had one platinum. You can check. I got the trophy for that. And I got a couple gold. I think the maybe had about half of them silver. So I would have had to play back through and try to get almost all of them silver. But I figured I'm not a trophy hunter. So as I talk about games, keep that in mind. If you're a trophy hunter, this game, if you want a platinum, it would be frustrating because you can't really control this. I think it's a swordfish. We'll leave it as that. So your swordfish guy, his nose is always weighing him down. So you have to hit X, which would make him swim. But he doesn't have like a swimming motion. He just kind of propels without animation, which is kind of annoying and stupid looking, to be honest. I mean, when I downloaded this game, I looked and saw that it had high reviews. I knew it was a multiplayer game with a challenge mode that I could rip through real fast. But I thought you'd have more control. For a multiplayer game to be fun, there shouldn't be a huge piece of chance in the game. So what I mean by this is if you hit X and you hit up and down to like make your guy rotate, if you accidentally hit it a little bit, he will go into a tailspin. Out of control, there's nothing you can do. And so like you kind of have to really hit very small and very control-wise, but he doesn't go straight. So it's not really a thing of skill or not. You kind of don't know which way he's going to go. So like if I hit one time, I'll play through, and if I hit it a little bit, he'll go perfect. I'll be able to nail it. The next time, same exact technique. I use the analog stick. I use the D-pad. I've tried both. But there's no level of control. Sometimes his body will just sink down, and then you have to kind of compensate a little bit more. So to be honest, I mean, that's what frustrated me and took some enjoyment out of the game. Because I like a game like, if you think of like the original Mario. So the original Mario, he's a little guy. He jumps around. Yeah, you have to kind of land on like little pieces of blocks or bricks, whatever they are on some levels, but you can control him perfectly. He jumps the same way. He runs the same way. Everything, and right there, that's what you want. Everything is going to be the same every time you play it. This game, not so much. I could see it being fun with people who are not used to video games, but there was something off about it. The controls weren't there for me to have fun playing challenge mode. There were some, like when I checked, I'm like, oh man, I have 4 levels left of this garbage that you were just trying. I would just go through, and one time, perfect. I barely even touched the up and down stick. He flew through a level perfect, bounced off the walls, got like a platinum. That's actually how I got my platinum. I was not trying for platinum, because after I played the first basic level thinking, okay, all I have to do is go straight, I'll get a platinum. And having him just flail around for no reason sometimes, it just was frustrating. And there was no skill because it's something off. It's either like a delay. I mean, people can come on and you can bash me or whatever if you made the game. You can say that it's perfect or whatever, but the controls aren't perfect. And when the controls aren't perfect, the game isn't fun. I mean, there's no fun to it. You don't have to sit down and play the game to realize that it's not fun. Now, again, I didn't dig into the multiplayer, so maybe the multiplayer would add a little bit to it. You're playing with someone else, they're having the same trouble with controls, but to me, then you're going to play, and the person you're playing against is going to get lucky. So when they get lucky, that's how you lose, or vice versa, you would win because you got lucky. To me, that's not a fun game, and that's something that annoys me. So that was a game I dug into this week. And I mean, I don't think it's on PlayStation downloads anymore, which is kind of a bummer. So if you just started listening to this, I know I'm getting behind. I used to be up to date where I could download a game and play it that month, and that was it. But with the Switch, and a little bit before the Switch, to be honest, I kind of got away from that. So thanks for sticking with me. If you need anything else, like insight on a game, please let me know. Message me. I can download it. So like, if you're thinking of buying PlayStation Plus and you want me to check out a game for you to see if it's worth it to buy PlayStation to get a free game, let me know and I can download it for you if you really want me to. If not, I'm going to kind of just see. I mean, I'm assuming most people have PlayStation Plus. They downloaded these games. So the idea behind this segment, I mean, it's not even PlayStation Plus, because if Nintendo starts doing free games too, then I'll be choosing between the PlayStation 4 and the Nintendo Switch. It's just what I have. So it's kind of like gaming on a budget. You want a nice game to play, and you're thinking, I'm in the middle of like a quest game. I'm playing 50 hours of Witcher 3. I'm still not done with it, which I still haven't even dug into. I'm still on Witcher 1, to be honest. But say you have one of those games and you want a nice little quick game to switch it with. You come home, tough day at work, you know you need to be in bed in an hour. Say you went out and watch a game, went out for drinks or something. You're like, I should really get to bed for an hour. I don't want to get into Witcher. That will keep me up all night. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up one of these quick games that are free from PlayStation. That's the idea behind it. You can throw it up and play it. I'm playing them through, talking about them on the podcast, gives me content and other things to write about. So that's the idea. I'm still picking up. I actually think I counted. and I have 20 games or so for the PlayStation 4 as well. I want to say that about 5 of those are actually purchase games. Like I have a Ninja Turtles, maybe 2 Assassin's Creed, Doom, and Witcher. I think that's 5. So I have about 5 of those. So that means that I have about 15 games that are PlayStation downloadable games. So again, yeah, if I beat a game a week, I could finish these within like a month or so. But sometimes like they had some games, like there's a Ninja Senki game or something that I got that I think was a PS Vita download, but it was cross-buy. So some of them you can look at online beforehand. So it was a cross-buy for PlayStation 4, so I downloaded it just to have a game to play on the PlayStation 4. And it's frustratingly just hard. Like it's like an old game for no reason. There's no saves. And I mean, there's continues and stuff. But once you go through and you fight a level, it takes you all the way to the beginning. So it's kind of like if I wanted to play a game like that, I would play a more fleshed out NES game. It reminds me of a game, and I'll get into it whenever I beat it, because I make sure I beat it before I talk about it. But that's the idea of like some of the games I've picked up and why I have so many. Some of them are just like small games, like what's the one? The Day of the Tentacle or something like that. I'm still playing through that just because it's boring. And that one had high reviews too. So like if it's a game that's boring and I really don't want to play, I'll play it just to beat it before the podcast. But I had another game to beat, and I'll be circling back through. And then as I beat the longer games, so basically my strategy is I play a longer game, beat the short games, talk about them on the podcast. When I beat a longer game, then I just focus on beating that one, talk about that. Kind of gives me a week or two to play with for podcast content. So that's what I've been doing, trying to circle back into it and get a lot of the content up and running. That's my idea, and that's where we'll be going for the gaming segment of the show. The next part, the main part of this week's podcast episode, daylight savings time. Daylight savings time is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of, and yet every year we have to do it, at least here in North Carolina. I know some states can opt out because I've been doing some research on this, and I really think that they should abolish it or make it standard time. So the idea, for people who don't know, is the Earth is kind of tilted on an axis. And throughout the different times of the year, that axis is either closer to the sun or further away. That's why you get your seasons. And it's not a perfect loop around the sun. That's why we get leap year days. So the idea behind it, when there are time zones, back in the day, how people would know that it was noon, and it's called high noon, is because the sun was perfectly straight up above whatever location you're in. Because the Earth rotates and it goes from east to west. So now the sun is perfectly straight up ahead. That's noon. So that's your time zone time. And so there's like a center time, Greenwich Medium Time or whatever, that I think's like lined up in maybe England or somewhere. It's 5 hours ahead of us, I think, here in the United States. I mean, I don't have all those facts, but I do know that we're 5 hours offset normally. Now, based on my research, some energy companies got together and they wanted people to use less energy because it costs them. They have to produce the energy, so it's a cost to them. And they really don't make so much money off it because it's a public utility. So the government doesn't let them go above certain rates. It's not like oil, where if oil were to become a public utility registered by the government, you would see oil prices drop because right now they make billions of dollars in profits. The electric company and your power companies do not do that because they're federally regulated. And so to help keep the costs down, they went ahead and the power companies were like, hey, we should have this daylight savings time. I think it's falsely attributed to farmers. The farmers wanted different times to go to market, but that doesn't make sense because if the sun rises earlier or later, depending on the time of the year, then they would have to either wake up earlier or later, and it would take them longer to get their stuff into the market. Like a farmer's market or whatever, they have a great one here at North Carolina State University that if you're ever in Raleigh, check it out. But that would mean that the farmers would have to get up early, pick their stuff, get it on a truck, drive it over to the farmer's market, have it up before sunrise. I think that's when it starts. I could be wrong, but that's basically the idea. And so energy companies wanted people to use less energy because then it costs more. They can hire less employees, basically. So it's a cost-cutting maneuver for them and the government. So they went ahead and they implemented this, and it became a standard, I think, in the 1960s, which, if you think about it, that was way, way after the Industrial Revolution. So a lot of the farmer techniques about people having to like carry horse and buggy into town, that wasn't a thing in the 1960s. So I think that's definitely a rumor that it was started because of farmers. So they went ahead and did this, and now there's new studies that say this time, springtime, when you spring ahead, you actually lose an hour of sleep. Well, the studies say that causes heart attacks, an increase in heart attack because you have increase in loss of sleep. You probably get some type of obesity because you're eating more because you're tired, you're trying to stay awake. And then the next thing is car accidents, because you have people who drive truck, they're delivering the food from across the country. They now have to wake up. They already wake up in the middle of the night. So they might have to wake up at midnight to be at their run at 12 to deliver your food at 2 a.m. before they can go ahead and get it ready for breakfast for some of these 6 a.m. places. So now you're having truck drivers lose a complete hour of sleep. So now it's basically like they're waking up at 11 p.m. to go. It's kind of like doing an all-nighter. And that kind of shift messes with your biological clock. So that goes ahead and adds in this extra stress that your body does not need. And with the increases in technology, you really don't need that anyway. So it doesn't make sense. Like, why do we need this extra time, daylight or not daylight? Most people have lights. If it's an energy thing, then why are we federally subsidizing people's cell phones? Because they need to charge those. That's going to take up extra energy. So don't make it all about the lights. That's a bullshit excuse. If you want it to be because you want the sun to set later and it's in the summer, people will be outside, whatever, go ahead. Make that year-round time. Why change it now? I think I saw a map that said that the sun would be up at 7 and maybe it would be down at 5 p.m. across the United States. If you stayed on standard time, most of the time, that would be true year-round. So for people going to work, if you did not have daylight savings time, the sun would be up around 7 o'clock and 5 or later, depending on the length of the day, which is almost perfect for people. It's up if everyone leaves at work at 7 or so. That's mostly, I think, a typical work day from Americans are like either 9 to 5 or like 8 to 5 if they give an hour lunch, whatever. So there you go. You have a standard time. And then by the time you get home, it's 5 p.m. You're not worrying about the markets or being outside during the day. It's light. In the summer, yeah, the sun might set around 6 or 7. But hey, whatever, it doesn't matter. Or if you're worried about that and you want the later sun times in the day after the work hour, why don't you go ahead and make it that time? Make it daylight savings time year round. But make the announcement and let people pick. I think some states, like I want to say Arizona, does not do daylight savings time. So it works out perfect for them because they already have it set in stone. So now we go ahead and you have some type of system that is in place and that is just set up to work. It's a perfect balance. And so that's what I think should happen. I think we should vote on it, put it on the ballot, do something. I don't even think it would be like on an election ballot. But go ahead and have that. Have most people vote. And I bet if they did the vote right now in March, it would not be passed. Like they would go ahead and change it so that we stopped it. Because people don't want to change their clocks an hour and ahead. It's confusing. Yeah, I know your smartphone or whatever device you have automatically takes care of it. But some of them don't. So people who have old school alarm clocks, they have to manually set it and then hope that they have it set right. I know people who are still confused about it. I've heard some parents have been putting their kids an hour later to bed, thinking that with daylight savings time, they would have to get used to that. But now their kids are going to be going to bed at almost midnight or 11 p.m., which is crazy because they messed it up. They didn't know daylight savings time switched back in the spring. They thought that you just kept losing hours of sleep for some reason. But that's because it's a convoluted system and you don't even need it anymore. There is no need, no reason to have it. And so I think we should abolish it. Get rid of it. No more daylight savings time. Who even cares anymore? I mean, you're just going to go ahead and lose an hour of sleep. In the winter, yeah, it's great. You get an hour of sleep back. But if you don't have it at all, then you never lose that to begin with. And so there you go. I think you should cut that out. That's my biggest problem today. Go ahead and have it like the biggest problem. I don't know. I'm thinking about adding some type of segment like that, but I don't know what to call it. I don't want to go ahead and piggyback off something else, but that's what makes me mad this week is daylight savings time. It is kind of annoying. All right, the second thing here, I know I normally don't talk sports, but I do talk tech. And so the NCAA basketball tournament bracket was just announced before I did this podcast. And so every year, it's like a big thing. ESPN has a guy on staff who just does bracket picks year round, which is dumb. What kind of job is that? He's always wrong. He guaranteed that Syracuse would be in the tournament, and of course, they're not again. Or I guess they made it last year and it was on the bubble, whatever. But he was like making guarantees. He said USC would not be in. They're in. Syracuse is out. I think that might have been the big one that he had mixed up. And of course, then he gets all the seedings wrong and the locations because you really don't know. It's a committee of people putting together, but that's his job all year round. Is picking probably just to get clicks. I'd imagine that they have ads on these pages that I have just blocked out. So that's basically what this guy's job is. And now, what I noticed this year is they've been kind of using this computer algorithm, some type of analytics that I don't know. It's called RPI, and I don't know if the formula is publicly available. Let's take a look and see. So basically, it's a formula that was created in 1981 to be used, or I don't know when it was created, but it was started to be used by college basketball in 1981 to help them seed playoff teams by taking the team's winning percentage, which is 25% of the formula, its opponent's winning percentage, which is 50% of the formula, and then the winning percentages of those opponents' opponents. So it seems kind of crazy that someone would go ahead and come up with a system. I do like that it's transparent, though, because some of the ones like the BCS, they have paid formulas for the computers for college bowl rankings that they don't disclose. And when they don't disclose it, that means that anyone can be making it up. Anyone can cite it for one conference or the other. So the RPI goes ahead and gives a number. And so the strength of schedule then accounts for 75% of the calculations. And that's why some teams or some players, get ranked higher. I guess it's teams only. So if you look at like the RPI and then you look at the bracket, you can still see that there is some slight against certain conferences and their seedings and like what happens. And so what happens here, looking at it, I don't know if I can see like the actual RPI college basketball ranking list. It looks like it might just have it per team basis. I guess I'd have to look at each team to see what their ranking is going to be. But that's kind of like what they're using. And to me, and so now here you have teams that have been playing year round and they're going to go ahead and they leave it down to like some computer formula to show their RPI ranking percentage index or whatever, which I guess if it's transparent and that's what they settled on, that's great. Just don't have any hidden formulas. I wasn't sure coming in. But what I'm looking at is if they're going to go ahead and use that, that's an unbiased formula. And then you have another thing, just like an eye test or whatever, that doesn't make sense. So the team that I was looking at today that really got kind of screwed out was Wisconsin. So Wisconsin, the Badgers, they ended up being 25-9. They lost to like some top seeds like UNC throughout the year. They lost to Purdue. Basically, I think all of their losses except for 2 were against teams that made the NCAA tournament. And they were runner-up in the Big Ten and runner-up in the Big Ten championship game that happened today. They had 9 losses, 25-9. They ended up being an 8 seed. An 8 seed is crazy because 25-9, I think the Tar Heels were a 1 seed, and their record was 20. Where is their record at? So I think their record is 27-7. So they were 2 games better than Wisconsin, and they ended up being a 1 seed. It doesn't make sense. I know they beat them head-to-head, but one of the Tar Heels' losses was to Indiana, an Indiana team that did not make the tournament. They lost to them by 9. So you have losses like that, and they also lost to Georgia Tech, which I don't even know if Georgia Tech made the tournament. I think they might have. But they have like some losses that would just be kind of like head shaking. Like they didn't win their conference tournament, which I understand that. And I don't have a problem with them being a 1 seed. But here you have Wisconsin, who's a runner-up, 2 games behind. It just doesn't make sense if they would get left out. They were an 8 seed. So they weren't, what I mean by left out is they were left out of the top teams on the bracket. So they're a middle seed. So they actually have to play in the second round. If they win, they have to play Villanova, the overall number 1 seed. And that's their reward for being the runner-up in the Big Ten. And I know that's probably why Syracuse got left out, because that Wisconsin team beat Syracuse by 17. So if Syracuse would have been in and would have had like a 9 seed or something, that would have been crazy, because you're basically saying that the games don't count. And still some of these, it's like, hey, the games, I guess they don't count. You're just looking at winning percentage. You're not looking at head-to-head. So you could beat a team by 30, and it doesn't matter. As long as you're beating teams that are in other conferences, and that's what I think can slight it. If you play a team from a lower conference that wins their conference and you beat them by 1, even if it's at home or on the road, it looks like the RPI doesn't take that into account. But that will go ahead and raise your ranking or lower it. So you could basically have a big conference team full of 4 or 5 recruits, star recruits, that aren't having their thing, and here's a computer telling you that they're great. And you have people sitting back and saying, well, maybe we actually like this conference a little bit better. And so I think Tech should go ahead and start to do a little bit more formula-based stuff for the NCAA tournament. Too much money is getting thrown around at this tournament for people just to be sitting in a room and picking teams and kind of picking matchups. They said that they were picking matchups based on, like, to make it fair for the conference, but I don't know how many teams from each conference made it. Maybe ESPN knows. Sometimes they do like a breakdown of who's who, and here's what it is, and then how many teams are in and what their RPI is, and if they were above or beyond. But it looks like they don't have that set up yet. They just have the actual bracket. So whenever that's up there, I think that might make it a little bit more clear. But I would want to see what teams from each tournament made the actual bracket, because then you're telling them, like, hey, maybe all right, so I did some more digging and I couldn't really find it, but that's probably going to be out there. But that would be interesting to see too, because that's a personal weight that they can throw in, because a lot of money is thrown around on this. And I know I have a separate Southbound Sports thing that I've been throwing together, and that might have kind of made this podcast a little bit crazy there as I was looking stuff up. But I think that the NCAA, they make so much money on this tournament, I feel like they kind of pick and choose what teams they want in. And yeah, I know if you're a fan of a team, you can go ahead. There's a conference tournament. See if they'll win it. Go ahead and put them up. They can win the tournament. They can get an automatic bid. But it doesn't tell you that they don't have a crappy matchup. So the NCAA looks and they're like, oh, we have a team. Nah, they won their tournament. We have to put them in. Let's put them in a play-in game. I think they have these play-in games now, if you don't really watch basketball. But they have a play-in game that you can go ahead and make a play-in game. But if you win your conference tournament, you're an automatic bid. They can throw you in it. So you make the tournament. It shows up as a tournament on your resume or whatever for all time. But if they really don't think you're that good, they can throw you in these play-in games where you have to win an extra game and basically play 3 games the first weekend. And they said that every year someone from that makes it. But I think those should be the bubble teams. I don't think automatic bids should be there. Maybe they're not, but I'm pretty sure that they have a play-in between 2 16 seeds that are automatic bids from like smaller conferences, because they have like Mount St. Mary's, which I believe is an automatic bid. Yeah, that's not fair to them. They win their conference tournament just like everyone else. And so how come they have to go ahead and play in this play-in game and then other conferences do not? Because it's not fair to their kids. Why would they go ahead and have to play in some game in Dayton, Ohio, I believe is one where those are. So you have a first game in Dayton, then you have to fly to, where's it? One's in Buffalo, New York. The other one's in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to take on Kansas. Ooh, great. If I'm the last seed, if I'm a 16 seed, just go ahead and match them up against Kansas. Why do these top two number one seeds need an extra chance or like just to play? It doesn't make sense. It's not fair to the younger schools. But you're going to go ahead and squeeze in some of these other teams that shouldn't be there, which I don't even know what seed they are. So like there's a ton of automatic bids, but whenever all those automatic bids are over at like 10 seed, 12 seed maybe, I don't even know when it stops. But whenever that happens, we need to come up with some type of formula. That's what I'm looking at, some type of formula that's even better at going ahead and throwing things together. But put it out there. Try to think about some stuff. Let me know. Leave a comment. Send me an email. And try to see if anyone has any other ideas. But I don't know how they can do it. I know that would be the first step, is get rid of these play-in games for automatic qualifiers. If you automatically qualify for the big dance. Quit making it like that. And actually, it would be a better game. They want people to watch these first 4 games. Make them exciting. Throw in there 2 big teams. I know they already do it for 2 of the matchups. So you have Kansas State and Wake Forest in one of them. 2 power conference teams that didn't make it. They've been playing hot maybe in their conference tournament, got a win or 2, but they didn't win their conference tournament. So you go ahead, you throw them in a first 4 matchup, let them play their hearts out, make them claw and scratch for that advance. Then they go ahead and get advanced, and then boom. They should actually make them a 16 seed. Why make these younger schools 16 seeds or smaller schools? They always say, oh, number 1 seed's never been upset in the first round. You put them against some of these other schools from their own conference, yeah, they'll be upset. Yeah, they might not lose to Mount St. Mary's, or I don't even know what this other one is, maybe New Orleans. Is that a school? Yep. The University of New Orleans. Never even heard of them. But somehow they're in, and they're in the first 4. So you probably won't hear about them anymore because there's a good chance that they could lose this next round. So that's what the NCAA should do. I know I normally just talk gaming and tech, but basically I was looking at the formulas for that, getting into some of the stats and stuff, and that's a big tech thing, coming up with formulas for like even artificial intelligence. Like whenever you're trying to take 2 entities and you're comparing them based off just qualitative data, you want to go ahead and make the best decision that you can, but sometimes you can't. So then you're stuck. And it's just not fair all around for kids that work all year for one goal, and then they have to sit and play in a play-in game. Or some teams, like they go ahead, they have a hard resume. Yeah, you might come up close, number 2 in both, like Wisconsin, but then you go ahead and get the shaft, and now you're going to have to prove your worth here on the big stage when basically you've really already done that all year. You've been ranked for a good chunk of time, just had a tough couple. No, it wasn't even a tough couple of games. They went to the championship game and lost. That's nothing to be slighted at. I know teams that have done that and advanced pretty far in the tournament before, made the Final Four, maybe even the national championship game. So it's not like they couldn't do it. But there you go. That's probably it for this week's podcast. Again, I'm digging back into doing a game a week, looking at doing some ratings and stuff. I'm still doing the Raspberry Pi stuff, but I need to get the Leahey report set up first before I dig into that. I don't want to get behind and start doing they're not even tutorial videos, but just showing some robotic stuff, but I don't want to get behind and do that and then keep putting off another episode of the podcast right up or whatever, moving that over and all this other stuff. So I'm still working on moving up the episodes of the podcast. Then I have to update the podcast feed so that each episode links back to it just for like iTunes, I think. I don't know if you can click on it from the iTunes RSS reader, but I know some of the other sites, they let you. So if you click on like view more, it will take you to the actual Leahey report so that you can view my site. That's another thing I'm looking at. I did just went ahead and updated my sitemap for my site, so it should start showing up more in search results. And I'm working on the custom search engine. So for the Leahey report, I do have a research section, which is why I started to get into the NCAA tournament anyway today, just to tease that. So if you go to research.richieleahey.com, I've been building up. Right now, it's just like my half resume, which used to be the about page of richieleahey.com. So if you looked at my website before and you're like, yeah, blah, 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 this is all my credentials, where I went to school, what my major was, different services and things. So I've been digging those out, still keeping that up. That'll probably be on the Leahey Report somewhere in some type of format. And then there I have the extra thing, the research one. I've been digging into MLB payrolls. I've talked about it before. I had the Atlanta Braves one up. I actually had a good amount of viewership on that one. So that's pretty cool. I've been throwing it up. The links aren't really there yet because, of course, I'm moving sites. But that will come eventually. I wanted to have it up by the start of baseball this year. But I think I might just start rolling out teams. I don't know if I'm going to have the opening day payrolls on for this year or not. But I'm going to get caught up on that. I'm also looking into college basketball stuff too. So if you're into the stats and into like the programming type stuff, where I'm doing data mining, just research, getting into the numbers, that's what I started doing it a little bit for college sports revenues and the MLB payrolls. And I started to talk about it a little bit. But just watching the NCAA tournament, it made me think of it. And I figured I'd add it into the podcast today a little bit, just to talk about the research section of my site. So that's it. I do like the portability of the Nintendo Switch, just to throw that on to the end here of the podcast. And the gaming, going to get into a game a week. I'm going to start rotating between the Switch and the PlayStation Plus games. So again, I'm probably not going to be covering every PlayStation Plus game like I have been in previous months, once for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3. I know there was like some sports game this month, which I didn't end up downloading just because I'm so into Zelda. So if you download games, check them out. They are free anyway. Play them. Leave in the comments if you like them or not, and if I should check them out. If there is one that I overlooked that I don't talk about, sometimes I download them. Like Tiny Troops, I downloaded, have it on there. Just haven't dug into it enough to play. But I'll be bringing it in one of the coming weeks, because right now the Switch only has a handful of games. Right now I have Snipper Clips, Shovel Knight. I think there's like 3 different stories for Shovel Knight, which I will bring in. And then, of course, The Legend of Zelda. The next game, I thought about getting Bomberman, but it's too expensive for that game because I know how the story mode would be. So if that drops, might get that. If not, it'll probably be the redo of Mario Kart, and then possibly Mario or something else later in the year. Now, if they go ahead and get this online store running, that could totally change if they let you download games. Hopefully they have some type of story or trophy tracking, achievement stuff. Again, I don't chase them, but it is nice to just have it so listeners can go ahead and check, vouch it out, check and see. So we have like a little community where I am getting checked for things that I say. So that's it for this week. Starwhal. Wouldn't check it out if you've listened to the beginning of the podcast, the show, and you saw that game. I mean, if you have 2 players, maybe, but again, there are other games like Towerfall Ascension that I don't even know if I talked about on here before these are the type of games that I might just throw up as reviews that I would check out before I would check out Starwhal, just because the controls are much tighter in that game. But let me know if you have any questions, comments. Again, follow me, Richie Leahey, at Twitter. And I think that's my Instagram. I had some issues with that being linked to my Facebook and stuff. And I do have a Facebook page, so like that. I'll be sending that stuff out. Hopefully get some more followers and stuff. But I haven't really been promoting any of this material. I will be promoting it soon once I get the Leahey Report up and running. So let me know if you have any questions. And thank you for listening. I'm your host, Richie Leahey.